All right, so we're diving into Terrifier 3 today. We got this Screen Rant review, and it seems like you all are really curious about, well, Art the Clown, right? Especially after that second movie. I mean, horror sequels, they're hit or miss, aren't they? What do you think?
Oh, absolutely.
Mm.
It's like trying to bottle lightning,
Yeah.
Give the fans what they loved the first time, but like make it new, make it scary again.
Mm.
And this review definitely seems like it's wrestling with that, especially with Sienna and her story.
Yeah, they're really trying to, give her more depth this time, aren't they? Exploring the trauma from the last film, her being the final girl and all. But the review almost makes it sound like two different movies got mashed together.
Right. Like on one hand, you've got Sienna trying to, recover. And then on the other, it's just Art being, well, Art.
Exactly. And then you throw in those time jumps the review mentions, like 5 years later, then back to a few days after Terrifier 2. It's a little confusing.
Yeah, it definitely makes you wonder what story they're really trying to tell there. And with Terrifier 2 still being pretty recent, it's not like they had a ton of time to play with.
Although some people in the comments were saying that the time jump wasn't a plot hole, just reality, like scheduling conflicts and all that. What do you think about that?
Well, it shows you how much people care about this stuff, right?
Yeah.
I mean, horror fans, they get us so into it, and they notice everything. Sometimes real-world stuff does affect movies. Doesn't mean it's always a good thing, but it's something to consider.
Totally. Okay, but let's be real. We're all here for Art the Clown, right? The review praises the actor, says this is his best performance yet, but then it also says he gets sidelined sometimes. How does that even work? Brilliant, but underused.
It does make you wonder what they could have done if they really let him, go wild. There are those scenes mentioned, though, like Art in a Santa suit, and even getting a hold of a real beard in the most Art way possible, of course.
Oh, totally. Art wouldn't be caught dead with one of those fake Santa beards. It's got to be authentic, even if it means a bit more cleanup on set. But seriously, those little details, even him getting annoyed with his little demon buddy, it adds so much. You can't help but wonder what's going on in that head of his.
Exactly. That's what makes a slasher villain more than just like a killing machine. It's those weird quirks, the little bits of humor. You never know what they'll do next.
It's like he keeps you guessing, but in the most messed up way possible, But the review did mention something about the movie lacking tension because the violence gets predictable. Do you think it's just a case of, we've seen it all before, so it's not scary anymore?
That's an interesting thought, isn't it? Like, have we become kind of desensitized to the gorier side of horror these days?
Yeah, maybe we need that slow build, that suspense, instead of just bam in your face all the time.
Right. That whole idea of, what you don't see is scarier than what you do.
Oh, for sure. But then again, sometimes you want to see the monster, right?
Totally. And speaking of seeing things, the Screen Rant review, they also talked about the budget for this one. Or, well, the lack of budget, I guess you could say. Especially the sets. They weren't impressed. Does that kind of thing affect how scary you find a movie, you think?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, think about those classic horror movies. A lot of them, they didn't have much to work with, so they had to get creative. Camera angles, lighting, and of course, those practical effects.
Right. But the thing is, audiences now, they're used to a certain level of, polish.
Yeah, for sure. We've seen what indie horror can do with a shoestring budget, so the bar is definitely higher now.
Definitely. And the review really called out the college scenes, so they looked really cheap.
Ouch. Yeah, those sets can be tricky. You want it to look real, but not too real, you know?
Exactly. It's a fine line. But speaking of things that are tough to balance, we got to talk about the comments on this review, because people had some thoughts on that time jump we were discussing.
Oh, yeah. They were not shy. They were basically saying that the 5-year gap between movies, totally intentional, because that's how much time passed in real life between filming.
Huh. So are they saying it was a deliberate choice or just them trying to make the best of a bad situation?
Right. That's the question, isn't it?
Was it art or just, logistics?
Yeah, were they trying to be clever or just working with what they had? I guess that's up to the viewers to decide, right?
So taking all this into account, the Sienna stuff, the budget, art being, art. Or is Terrifier 3 a must-see or what?
That is the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
It sounds like this whole deep dive has given us more to think about than, a straight answer.
Mm.
But honestly, that's kind of how horror works sometimes.
So true. It's like this review and the comments, total mixed bag.
Right.
I mean, if you're just there for the gore and, Art doing his thing, you'll probably have a blast. But what about those of us who want a good story, too? Yeah, if you need those characters you can connect with, a plot that really grabs you. Terrifier 3 might not be it, which isn't to say it's a bad movie, just maybe not for everyone.
Exactly. It's like some people, they like their coffee, strong, bitter, straight to the point.
I like that analogy.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of ties into something else the review mentioned about whether horror movies these days, are they still, scary? Or have we just gotten used to all the blood and guts?
Ooh, that's a good question. Like, has it gone too far?
Maybe. Or maybe Terrifier 3 is like the beginning of something new.
Yeah.
A different kind of horror.
Now, that is a scary thought in a good way. Well, folks, there you have it. Our deep dive into Terrifier 3, the movie that's got everyone talking or maybe screaming. Whether you're team art or team coherent plot, we hope this has given you something to think about. Until next time, stay curious, stay terrified, and keep those reviews coming.